The notification sound on my phone cut through the silence of my apartment like a blade. December 23rd, 7:15 in the evening, and I was sitting on my second-hand couch surrounded by a pile of unopened bills that weren't even mine. The text from my father hit me harder than any physical blow ever could. "Stay away from Christmas. The family is tired of you." Below it, my sister Emma's response appeared instantly, a laughing emoji. Just like that. 3 years of sacrifice reduced to mockery. My fingers moved before my brain caught up typing back, "Then I'll stop touching the bills." Their giggles echoed through the family group chat as I opened my banking app and began systematically canceling every automatic payment I'd been making for them. They thought it was an empty threat. They had absolutely no idea what was about to happen next. I stared at the screen of my laptop cursor hovering over the final payment cancellation. 3 years ago, everything changed for my family, though they never wanted to acknowledge how or why. Dad's construction business, Morrison Building Solutions, had been thriving until their biggest client, a commercial real estate developer, filed for bankruptcy. The domino effect was swift and merciless. Overnight, Dad went from successful contractor to desperate man facing foreclosure, bankruptcy, and the complete destruction of everything he'd worked 20 years to build. That's when I stepped in. I was 26 then, a software engineer at a tech startup in Austin, making good money but living modestly, while Dad raged about lawyers and unfair business practices, while Mom cried about losing the house, while Emma worried about her college tuition, and Jake panicked about his car payments. I quietly became the solution they never asked for and never thanked me for. I still remember the day I called the mortgage company pretending to be Dad and set up automatic payments from my checking account. $850 every month for their 4-bedroom colonial in Cedar Park. Then came the utilities, another $200 monthly. Emma's tuition at University of Texas, $4,000 per semester. Jake's car payment for his lifted Ford truck, $375 monthly. Mom's health insurance premium after Dad's business policy lapsed $600 monthly. But it didn't stop there. The country club membership that Dad insisted on keeping to maintain business relationships cost $200 monthly. Emma's sorority dues another $150. Jake's auto insurance, $200. The lawn service, because God forbid anyone in my family actually mow their own grass, $120 monthly. Even their cell phone bill, a family plan for 4 people with unlimited everything, $180 monthly. I calculated it once during a particularly bitter moment. I was spending over $3,000 monthly keeping my family afloat while they lived in blissful denial about their actual financial situation. Dad told everyone his business had recovered. He'd secured new contracts and was back on track. The truth was he was doing small handyman jobs and collecting unemployment, making maybe $800 on good months. As I clicked cancel on payment after payment, I remembered specific moments that now felt like betrayal. Emma posting Instagram photos from expensive restaurants, always with the caption "family dinner," while I ate ramen noodles in my apartment to stretch my grocery budget. Jake showing off his truck modifications on social media, custom rims and sound system upgrades I indirectly funded while I took the bus to work because I couldn't afford car maintenance. The worst part was how they treated me during family gatherings. Dad would make subtle digs about my modest lifestyle, suggesting I lacked ambition compared to his success. Emma rolled her eyes whenever I mentioned work, stress, acting like my job was easy compared to her challenging sorority leadership positions. Jake once told his friends I was cheap because I always suggested free activities instead of expensive outings. My phone buzzed with notifications from the family group chat. Emma had sent a photo from their Christmas Eve party preparations, the dining room table, loaded with expensive catering trays. "Getting ready for tomorrow's celebration, can't wait to see everyone." Jake responded with fire emojis. Mom added, looking forward to our traditional feast. Traditional feast. Paid for with my credit card in a house I was keeping from foreclosure, celebrating a holiday they just banned me from attending. The irony was suffocating. They were preparing for a Christmas celebration funded entirely by the person they just rejected. The decorations, Emma was arranging the food, Mom was organizing the wine Dad was selecting, all purchased with credit cards that would start declining in exactly 6 hours when the banks processed my cancellations. I closed my laptop and walked to my kitchen, opening the refrigerator to find leftover pizza and a half-empty carton of orange juice. This was my Christmas Eve dinner while they feasted on my dime. The silence in my apartment felt heavy, broken only by the occasional notification from their group chat showing more party preparations. Tomorrow would be interesting. Christmas Eve at the Morrison household was apparently in full swing. My phone buzzed constantly with updates from their celebration, each notification a fresh reminder of what I'd been excluded from. Emma's Instagram story showed her in a new red dress, twirling in front of the Christmas tree that I'd unknowingly purchased last week when her credit card charged $400 at Home Depot. Jake posted a video of himself mixing cocktails at the bar cart, the same one Mom had bought online using the credit card I'd been faithfully paying off for 36 months. The house looked perfect in their photos. Twinkling lights outlined every window wreaths hung on the doors, and the interior decorator had outdone herself with garland and ornaments throughout. I knew because I'd seen the $5,000 charge on Mom's credit card statement last week. At the time, I'd winced but paid it anyway, just like I always did. Dad posed in several photos, wearing his expensive suit, the one he'd bought for client meetings, that I later discovered were mostly job interviews that never panned out. He stood in the living room I'd furnished after the bankruptcy next to the entertainment center I'd purchased when their old one broke holding a glass of wine from the collection he'd built using credit I maintained. My phone rang at 8:30. Mom's contact photo smiled at me from the screen, a family picture from last Christmas where I stood awkwardly at the edge, already feeling like an outsider. I declined the call. It rang again 2 minutes later. Declined again. Then came a text from Mom. Honey, my card was declined at the store. Must be some mistake. Can you call the bank? I stared at that message for a long moment. Even now, facing the first consequence of my actions, she assumed I would fix it. That I would call the bank, sort out the mistake, and ensure her convenience continued uninterrupted. 20 minutes later, Jake's desperate text arrived. Dude, my card got declined getting gas. This is embarrassing. What's wrong with it? Jake was on a date I realized from his earlier Snapchat story. He'd taken some girl to an expensive steakhouse, probably spent $200 on dinner, and now couldn't afford gas to get home. The girl was likely standing beside his lifted truck, watching him frantically call his bank, while she wondered what kind of guy couldn't cover a $30 gas bill. Emma's text arrived at 9:15, shorter but more frantic. Card declined at the pharmacy. This is urgent. I could picture the scene. Emma probably picking up medication or last-minute items for tomorrow's celebration, standing at the checkout counter while other customers waited behind her. The pharmacist politely explaining that her payment method had been declined while Emma's face burned with embarrassment. But the best text came from Dad at 9:45. Son, there seems to be an issue with our accounts. Several cards are experiencing problems. Must be the bank's computer system. Can you contact them first thing in the morning to resolve this? Even facing financial chaos, Dad couldn't admit weakness or ask for help directly. He phrased it as a task for me to handle, as if I were his personal assistant rather than his son. As if the computer system error would be resolved by my intervention, magically restoring the money flow he'd taken for granted. I turned off my phone at 10 p.m. and took a shower. When I turned it back on at 11:17, missed calls and 43 text messages waited for me. The family group chat had exploded with confused messages about payment failures and account issues. Mom worried about the Christmas Day catering delivery scheduled for morning. Emma panicked about her car payment being late. Jake wondered aloud if identity thieves had compromised their accounts. None of them suspected me. Even after my explicit warning about stopping bill payments, they assumed some external force was causing their problems. Their faith in my continued financial support was so absolute that they couldn't conceive of me actually following through on my threat. The really cruel irony was revealed in Emma's 11:30 message. At least we have each other and this beautiful home to celebrate in. Some people have to spend Christmas alone. Some people. Like their brother sitting in his modest apartment eating leftover pizza, while they enjoyed the fruits of his labor in the house he kept from foreclosure. The brother they'd just banned from Christmas because the family was tired of him. I fell asleep to the sound of my phone vibrating with increasingly frantic messages, none of which contained an apology for their treatment of me. Only demands that I fix their problems, restore their convenience, and return their lives to the comfortable predictability my sacrifice had provided. Christmas morning would be very different from what they were expecting. Christmas Day dawned cold and gray in Austin, matching my mood as I made coffee in my quiet apartment. My phone had been silent since around 2 a.m. when the family's messages had finally stopped. I imagined they'd gone to bed, assuming everything would somehow resolve itself overnight, that Christmas morning would bring magical solutions to their financial problems. I was wrong about the silence lasting. At 7:15 a.m., my phone exploded with activity. The first call came from Mom, then Dad, then Emma, then Jake, all within a 5-minute window. I let them all go to voicemail while I ate breakfast and watched the local news. The lead story was about Austin families celebrating Christmas together. How heartwarming. The voicemails told an escalating story of panic. Mom's message was confused and worried the mortgage company had called about a missed payment, which was impossible because they were always current. Dad's message was angry and demanding I needed to call him immediately to discuss account irregularities that were threatening their holiday. Emma's message was tearful. Her college had sent an email about her account being frozen due to non-payment. Jake's message was pure rage. His truck had been repossessed from their driveway at 6 a.m. by men who woke up the entire neighborhood. That last detail made me smile grimly. Jake's precious lifted Ford F-150, the symbol of his identity and masculinity, towed away on Christmas morning while their neighbors watched. The same truck he'd used to drive past me when I waited for the bus, honking his horn mockingly as he headed to parties I wasn't invited to. My phone rang again. This time I answered. "What the hell have you done?" Dad's voice was controlled fury, the tone he used when trying to intimidate someone while maintaining his public image. "Merry Christmas to you too, Dad." "Don't get smart with me, boy. I don't know what kind of tantrum you're throwing, but it stops now. You're going to call every company and restore those payments immediately." "Actually, I'm not." "The hell you're not. This family doesn't have time for your emotional outbursts. Emma's college account is frozen, Jake's truck is gone, the mortgage company is threatening foreclosure. You fix this mess right now." My mess. I laughed, surprising myself with how bitter it sounded. "Dad, I've been cleaning up your messes for 3 years. I'm done." "You ungrateful little brat. After everything this family has done for you, this is how you repay us. We took you in, raised you, supported me. Now I was angry. Dad, I've been supporting all of you since your business failed. Every bill, every payment, every luxury you've enjoyed for the past 3 years came from my bank account." Silence on the other end. "You think I don't know about the handyman jobs? The unemployment checks, Dad. You haven't earned enough to cover the electric bill in 2 years, let alone the mortgage insurance, car payments, Emma's tuition, Jake's truck, Mom's medication, or that ridiculous country club membership you refuse to give up. You don't understand the complexities of business recovery." "I understand perfectly. Your business failed because your client stiffed you, and instead of downsizing and rebuilding honestly, you let your son sacrifice his future to maintain your lifestyle while you pretended to be successful. Now you listen here. No, you listen. You want to know about gratitude? I missed my own birthday dinner last year to cover mom's emergency room copay. I sold my motorcycle to afford Emma's sorority dues. I've been eating ramen noodles for 3 years, while Emma posts pictures of sushi dinners and Jake buys custom rims for his truck. And yesterday you banned me from Christmas because the family is tired of me. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. Dad's voice changed, becoming the manipulative tone he used when intimidation failed. Son, you're emotional right now. You're not thinking clearly. This family loves you, and sometimes love means tough choices. Maybe we were too harsh yesterday, but stop. Just stop talking. I could feel my heart racing, 3 years of suppressed anger finally erupting. Do you want to know what tough love looks like, Dad? You're about to find out? What's that supposed to mean? It means I hope you saved some money from those handyman jobs because you're going to need it. Oh, and Dad, there's something else you should know. Remember when you filed for bankruptcy protection 3 years ago? Remember how your lawyer recommended putting my name on certain assets to protect them from business creditors? Another silence longer this time. The house has a lien in my name for the amount I've invested in saving it. The dealership partnership you started last year, I'm listed as a 50% partner because I provided the startup capital. That vintage Mustang in the garage you're so proud of, the title has my name on it as co-owner because I paid for the restoration. That was just paperwork. Protective measures? That was legal documentation, Dad. Which means I don't just have the power to stop paying your bills. I have legal claim to half of everything you think you own. The phone went quiet except for the sound of Dad's heavy breathing. You wouldn't. Yesterday I wouldn't have. But yesterday you still considered me family. Today, according to your text message, I'm someone the family is tired of. So let me ask you, Dad, how tired of me are you now? I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside my window, families were probably gathering for Christmas breakfast, exchanging gifts, creating the kind of warm memories I'd been systematically excluded from for years. For the first time in 3 years, Christmas morning felt peaceful. By the afternoon, my phone showed 67 missed calls and over 100 text messages. I scrolled through them while eating leftover Chinese takeout, watching my family's desperation escalate in real time through increasingly frantic messages. Emma's texts started apologetic and quickly became desperate. Hale, please talk to us. I'm sorry about yesterday. We were just stressed about Christmas prep and didn't mean it. Please call me back. My college account is frozen and registration for spring semester is next week. I can't lose my classes, please. Jake's messages followed a different pattern, cycling through anger, bargaining, and panic. Bro, you're being ridiculous. Just fix this and we can talk. Okay, maybe we messed up, but this is extreme. Dude, my girlfriend saw them repo my truck. This is humiliating. Please, man, I'm sorry. I'll pay you back, I promise. Mom tried the gentle maternal approach. Sweet boy, I know you're hurt, but we can work this out as a family. We love you so much and want you to come home. There's been a misunderstanding and we can fix it together. Please don't punish everyone for a moment of poor judgment. Dad's messages were the most revealing, showing his progression from anger to bargaining to barely concealed panic. You will stop this childish behavior immediately. Let's discuss this rationally. Maybe we can arrange some kind of payment schedule. Son, we need to talk about the legal implications of your actions. Call me. The country club board is asking questions about my membership dues. This affects my business reputation. But the message that changed everything came from an unexpected source. At 3 p.m., my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in 2 years. Jessica Campbell, my ex-fiancée. Hello, stranger, I answered, genuinely surprised. Hale, hi, this is awkward, but I needed to call you. Jessica's voice brought back memories I'd carefully buried. We dated for 2 years, gotten engaged, and then everything fell apart in a mess of miscommunication and doubt that I'd never fully understood. She'd broken up with me, claiming I wasn't ready for marriage, that I had too many family obligations and financial secrets she couldn't live with. What's going on, Jess? I was at Sarah Mitchell's wedding last weekend, and God, this is hard to say. I ran into Emma, and she was pretty drunk during the reception. She started talking about you, about your family, and my stomach tightened. What did she say? Hale, she told me things I never knew. About your family's financial situation, about how you've been supporting them for years. But more than that, she told me about how they interfered with our relationship. The world seemed to stop. What do you mean? She said they were worried about losing their financial lifeline if you got married and moved out. She told me about conversations she had with your mom about how they needed to make sure I understood you weren't ready for marriage. My hands started shaking. Jessica, what exactly did Emma tell you? Remember when I started doubting whether you were being honest about your finances? Someone had told me you were hiding debt problems, and that's why you lived so modestly. That someone was your father. He called me, said he was worried about my future with you because you made poor financial decisions. I remembered that conversation with Jessica, how confused I'd been when she accused me of hiding money problems. I tried to explain that I lived modestly by choice, that I was financially stable, but she'd seemed convinced I was lying. And remember when I started worrying that you weren't emotionally available for marriage, Emma had coffee with me several times, telling me stories about how you'd always been irresponsible, how you couldn't commit to anything long term. She said you'd had commitment problems in previous relationships. My throat felt tight. I never had previous relationships like that. I know that now. God hail, I know that now. Your mom called me once very sweetly to express concerns about whether you were mature enough for marriage. She said you'd always been the type to run away when things got difficult, and she was worried I'd get hurt. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. My family hadn't just taken my money, they'd systematically destroyed the best relationship I'd ever had to ensure their financial security. Emma was laughing about it, Hale. She was drunk and thought it was funny how easy it had been to convince me you weren't ready for marriage. She said, and I quote, "We couldn't let him move out and start his own family when he was taking such good care of us. Jessica was sweet, but she would have ruined everything. I couldn't speak. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd planned to marry, had been manipulated by my own family into believing I was unreliable and financially unstable. They'd killed my chance at love to protect their comfortable lifestyle. Why are you telling me this now?" I finally managed. Because I realized I made a terrible mistake. I broke up with the best man I've ever known because I believed lies told by people who were supposed to love you most. And because Emma mentioned that your family was giving you a hard time about Christmas. And I thought you should know the truth about why we really broke up. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, staring at the wall for an hour. The betrayal was complete now. They hadn't just used me financially. They'd actively sabotaged my personal happiness to maintain their grip on my resources. Emma's laughing emoji yesterday wasn't just mockery of my hurt feelings. It was the same laughter she'd shown while destroying my engagement. When my phone rang again, I answered without looking at the caller ID. "We need to talk." Dad's voice was different now, stripped of authority and bluster. "Yes, we do. Can you come to the house? We're all here, and we want to work this out as a family." I looked around my modest apartment at the secondhand furniture and bare walls that reflected 3 years of sacrifice for people who'd repaid my generosity with manipulation and betrayal. "No, Dad. If you want to talk, you can come to me." "Son, that's not reasonable." "Here's what's reasonable. You have two choices. You can accept that your comfortable lifestyle is over and start figuring out how to live within your actual means, or you can meet my conditions for any future assistance. But either way, the old arrangement is finished forever." "What conditions?" For the first time in 3 years, I held all the cards, and I intended to use them. 2 days after Christmas, my family sat in my living room, looking like strangers in an unfamiliar world. Dad perched uncomfortably on my secondhand couch. His usual commanding presence deflated. Mom twisted a tissue in her hands, her eyes red from crying. Emma hunched in the corner chair, her designer clothes wrinkled, and her confident demeanor replaced by nervous energy. Jake stood by the window, unable to sit still, his identity crisis written across his face. The past 48 hours had accelerated their financial collapse beyond my most pessimistic expectations. The electricity had been shut off that morning. The water company had scheduled disconnection for tomorrow. Emma's spring semester registration had been canceled due to non-payment. Jake's auto insurance had been terminated, leaving him unable to legally drive even if he had a vehicle. Dad's country club membership had been suspended, cutting off his primary source of business networking and social validation. But the real panic had started when Dad received a call from his accountant about a potential IRS audit. Because that's when he realized what I'd discovered months ago. While reviewing the financial records for our partnership agreement, he'd been claiming business tax deductions for expenses that I had actually paid. "Before we discuss any future arrangements," I said, settling into my desk chair, while they occupied my furniture like refugees, "I want everyone to understand the legal reality of our situation." I opened my laptop and pulled up documents I'd been preparing for months, insurance against exactly this scenario. "Dad, for the past 3 years, you've claimed approximately $40,000 annually in business tax deductions. Office expenses, vehicle costs, equipment purchases, even some meals and entertainment. The problem is, I have documentation proving that I paid for most of those expenses through credit cards linked to my bank accounts." Dad's face went pale. "Those were legitimate business expenses. Paid for with my money while you claimed them as your business deductions? That's tax fraud, Dad. The IRS takes a very dim view of claiming deductions for expenses you didn't actually pay." Emma shifted nervously. "Surely that's just an accounting error." "It would be, except I also have documentation of your tuition payments, which Dad claimed as educational expenses for employee training. Jake's truck payments, which were listed as company vehicle expenses. Mom's medical insurance claimed as employee benefits. The country club membership listed as business development costs." The silence in the room was profound. "The good news," I continued, "is that as your business partner and the person who actually paid those expenses, I can legitimately claim them as my deductions. The bad news for you is that it means Dad owes the IRS approximately $12,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest." Mom found her voice first. "Honey, surely we can work something out." "We can. I've prepared a comprehensive plan that protects everyone legally and establishes a sustainable future for this family. But it requires complete transparency and fundamental changes in how we operate." I handed them each a printed document I'd spent days crafting. "These are my non-negotiable conditions for any future financial assistance or business partnership." Dad scanned the document, his face growing darker with each line. "This is outrageous. You can't seriously expect—" "I can, and I do. Condition 1, formal written acknowledgement of the financial support I've provided, including a detailed accounting of every payment made. This protects me legally and ensures everyone understands the true scope of my contribution." Emma looked up from reading. "You want us to sign something admitting we've been dependent on you. I want you to acknowledge reality. Condition 2, Emma and Jake must obtain part-time employment within 30 days and contribute at least $500 monthly to household expenses." "That's impossible," Jake protested. "I don't have any job experience and without a truck." "Then you'll learn what I learned at your age, how to work hard and live within your means." Condition 3, Dad and I become equal partners in Morrison Building Solutions with equal decision-making authority and profit sharing." Dad stood up abruptly. I built that business from nothing. You can't just. I saved that business from bankruptcy and provided the capital for its restart. Without my investment, there would be no business to argue about. Condition 4, family counseling sessions with a licensed therapist, minimum 6 months, to address the dysfunctional patterns that created this crisis. Mom's voice was small. We don't need therapy. We just had a misunderstanding. Mom, my family sabotaged my engagement to protect their financial arrangements. That goes beyond misunderstanding into psychological manipulation territory. Condition 5, public acknowledgement and apology for the interference with my relationship with Jessica. Emma's face flushed red. You can't make us apologize publicly, that's humiliating. More humiliating than lying to someone I loved to protect your sorority dues. My voice stayed calm, but the anger underneath was evident. Emma, you helped destroy the most important relationship I've ever had because you were afraid I might stop funding your lifestyle. How exactly do you think I should feel about that? The room fell silent again as the full scope of their betrayal settled over them. These conditions are subject to a probationary period, I continued. Any violation, any return to the old patterns of entitlement and manipulation, and all assistance ends permanently. I've already purchased a house across town and established independent finances. I don't need this family anymore, but I'm willing to rebuild relationships with people who are ready to be honest, responsible, and respectful. Dad tried one more time to assert his authority. Son, you're being unreasonable. Families don't operate like businesses with contracts and conditions. You're right, Dad. Families operate on love, respect, and mutual support. But what we had wasn't a family. It was a financial arrangement where I provided everything and you provided nothing except criticism and manipulation. If you want a real family relationship, we build it on these terms. If you want to continue the old arrangement, you do it without me. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the modest neighborhood I'd chosen for my new life. You have 72 hours to decide. Accept these conditions, and we start rebuilding our relationships on honest ground. Reject them, and you figure out your own solutions to the problems you created. Either way, I'm done being your secret benefactor while you treat me like the family disappointment. Behind me, I heard Emma crying quietly and Mom whispering reassurances. Dad rustled through the papers again, and Jake finally sat down heavily on the couch. For the first time in years, my future wasn't tied to their decisions. Whether they chose growth or continued dysfunction, I would be fine. The power balance had shifted permanently. 3 weeks later, I was settling into my new house when an unexpected visitor rang my doorbell. Through the window, I saw Alex, my youngest sibling, standing on my porch with a duffel bag. And an expression I recognized from my own mirror during those difficult years, exhaustion mixed with determination. Alex was 19, a college freshman, who'd always been different from Emma and Jake. Quieter, more observant, less caught up in the family's material obsessions. During family gatherings, Alex often seemed to watch everyone else like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. "Can I come in?" Alex asked when I opened the door. "I have some things I need to say." I led them to my living room, noting how Alex took in the modest but comfortable space I'd created for myself. Unlike the rest of my family's reaction to my downgrade, Alex seemed to appreciate the peaceful simplicity. "I know about everything," Alex said without preamble. "I've known for over a year." That wasn't what I'd expected to hear. Known about what? The money, the bills, Dad's business failing, all of it. Alex pulled out a worn notebook, pages filled with handwritten calculations and dates. I started noticing things sophomore year of high school. Dad would get stressed about bills, then suddenly everything would be fine. Payment due dates would pass, and somehow the utilities never got shut off. Alex opened the notebook, showing me meticulous records. I started tracking the patterns. Every time there was a financial crisis, your bank account would show activity. I figured out your online banking password. It's Mom's birthday, by the way. You should change that, and I've been monitoring the payments. I stared at my youngest sibling with new respect. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was 17 and scared. Alex's voice carried a weight that seemed too heavy for someone barely out of high school. I watched you sacrifice everything while Emma complained about not having enough money for spring break and Jake whined about his truck needing upgrades. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how without making everything worse. Alex flipped through more pages of calculations. Do you want to know what the final straw was for me last month when you missed Thanksgiving? Because you had to work overtime to cover Emma's emergency sorority fees. Emma told her friends you were antisocial and probably didn't really want to spend time with family anyway. The betrayal still stung hearing it reflected through Alex's eyes. I felt sick about it for months, Alex continued, watching you get smaller and quieter while everyone else got louder and more demanding. When Dad sent that Christmas text, I knew something had to change. I was hoping you would finally stand up for yourself. Is that why you're here? Alex nodded toward the duffel bag. I'm dropping out of college. What Alex know? Not permanently, but I can't sit in classes paid for with money you sacrificed while my family treats you like garbage. I got a job at a coffee shop near campus, and I'm going to help with expenses until everyone gets their act together. The courage of this 19-year-old shamed me. While I'd been enabling my family's dysfunction through silent sacrifice, Alex had been developing the moral clarity to make hard choices. There's something else, Alex said. I've been talking to Emma and Jake, really talking. Not the surface level stuff we usually do, but honest conversations about what's been happening. I think they're starting to understand how messed up this whole situation has been. As if on cue, my doorbell rang again. Through the window, I saw Emma and Jake standing together, both looking nervous and uncertain. I asked them to come, Alex said. It's time for some real honesty. When I opened the door, Emma immediately started crying. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but genuine remorse that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than convenience. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Alex made me write down everything you've paid for over the past 3 years. Everything. When I saw it all listed out, God hail, I had no idea how much you've sacrificed. Jake stepped forward, his usual swagger completely absent. Bro, I've been a complete ass. I kept thinking about you taking the bus while I drove past in a truck you were paying for, and I felt sick. Alex showed me the insurance payments, the gas money, even the maintenance costs. You've been supporting my entire lifestyle while I acted like you were some kind of loser. Alex guided everyone to sit down in my living room. Tell him about Jessica, they prompted Emma gently. Emma's face crumpled. That's the worst part. We were so scared of losing our financial security that we convinced ourselves you weren't ready for marriage. We told ourselves we were protecting Jessica from a bad situation, but really we were protecting ourselves from losing our comfortable life. I called her, Jake added quietly. Jessica? I apologized and told her the truth about what we did. She's really angry at us. But she said she wants to talk to you. The room fell quiet except for the sound of Emma crying and the tick of my wall clock. I have a confession too, Alex said. I've been in counseling since October. Student health services, talking about our family dysfunction and how it was affecting my ability to form relationships. The counselor helped me understand that staying silent about what I knew was its own form of enabling. Alex pulled out another paper. I wrote letters to each of you, but I wanted to read mine to Hale out loud. My youngest sibling cleared their throat and began reading. Hale, you taught me what real love looks like through your actions, even when the rest of us were too selfish and scared to see it. You showed me that love means sacrifice, but also that love shouldn't require you to disappear or become smaller to make others comfortable. I'm sorry it took me so long to find the courage to speak up. I'm sorry you felt so alone while carrying all of us. And I'm sorry that it took a crisis for the rest of our family to see what I've seen for months, that you're the strongest, most generous person we know, and we've been taking advantage of that strength instead of appreciating it. By the time Alex finished reading, we were all crying. Emma reached over and took my hand, her touch tentative, as if she wasn't sure she had the right to physical comfort anymore. We want to accept your conditions, Jake said. All of them. Emma and I both got jobs this week. I'm working at Martinez Auto Shop learning actual skills instead of just spending money on cosmetic truck modifications. Emma's working at the campus bookstore and tutoring high school students. We started counseling too, Emma added. Dr. Rodriguez, she specializes in family financial dysfunction. Apparently, it's more common than I thought, families where one person becomes the financial caretaker while everyone else stays in denial. Alex smiled at me, the first genuine smile I'd seen from any family member in months. We're not asking you to trust us right away. We know we have to earn that back. But we want to try to be the family you deserved all along instead of the family that took advantage of your love. For the first time since Christmas, I felt something that resembled hope. Not the desperate hope I'd carried for years that things would magically improve, but realistic hope based on genuine change and accountability. There's one more thing, Emma said, pulling out her phone. I posted something on social media. An apology to you and to Jessica. I know it doesn't fix everything, but I wanted people to know that we were wrong and that you deserved better from us. She showed me her Facebook post. I owe my brother Hale and his ex-fiancée Jessica a public apology. For the past 3 years, my family has been financially supported by Hale's generosity while treating him poorly and interfering with his personal relationships. We were selfish and manipulative, and we caused real harm to people we should have loved and protected. Hale, you deserved better from us. Jessica, you deserve the truth. I'm sorry. The post had dozens of comments, mostly from mutual friends expressing shock and support for me. Several people had shared their own stories of family financial manipulation. Recovery is going to take time, I said finally, and there will probably be setbacks. But this feels like a beginning. Alex hugged me tightly. It is a beginning. And this time we're all going to do the work together. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen preparing Easter dinner while Jessica chopped vegetables beside me, her engagement ring catching the afternoon light, streaming through the windows. Yes, engagement ring, the second one. The one I'd proposed with just 3 weeks earlier after months of rebuilding trust and rediscovering the love my family had nearly destroyed. The house smelled like rosemary lamb and fresh bread, a far cry from the lonely takeout dinners I'd eaten during those dark, winter months. Jessica had moved in 2 months ago, and together we'd transformed my modest space into a real home filled with warmth, laughter, and the kind of comfortable domesticity I'd never thought I'd have. They're here, Jessica said, glancing out the window as my family's car pulled into the driveway. The changes in my family over the past 6 months had been remarkable and sometimes difficult to witness. True transformation, I'd learned, was rarely a smooth process. There had been setbacks, arguments, moments of sliding back into old patterns before catching themselves and recommitting to growth. Dad walked in first, his appearance noticeably different from the man who'd sat in my living room making demands 6 months ago. The stress lines around his eyes had softened, and he carried himself with the quiet dignity of someone who'd learned to find self-worth in honest work rather than appearances. Morrison Building Solutions was thriving under our equal partnership, with Dad handling the hands-on construction work he'd always loved, and me managing the business development and financial planning that leveraged my analytical skills. Son, he said, embracing me with genuine warmth, thank you for hosting. The house looks wonderful. Behind him, Mom had developed a confidence I'd never seen before. Her job at the local library, her first employment in over 15 years, had given her purpose beyond managing household finances she couldn't actually afford. She brought a homemade dessert, something she'd started doing since learning to budget for ingredients, rather than ordering expensive catered items. "I made your favorite lemon bars," she said, kissing my cheek. "From scratch with lemons from Mrs. Patterson's tree." She showed me how to properly zest them. Emma arrived looking genuinely happy, in a way that had nothing to do with expensive clothes or social status. Working and attending school simultaneously had been challenging, but it had given her a sense of accomplishment that her previous lifestyle of leisure never had. She'd made Dean's List last semester while maintaining her job at the campus bookstore, and she'd started dating a graduate student she'd met in study group rather than the fraternity boys who'd previously interested her. "Hale, I have news," she said excitedly. "I got accepted for a summer internship at Dell. Paid internship thanks to my GPA and the recommendation from my economics professor. I'll be able to cover all my expenses for junior year." Jake had perhaps changed the most dramatically. Working at Martinez Auto Shop had revealed a natural mechanical aptitude that had flourished once he started earning rather than simply spending money. He'd saved enough to buy a used Honda Civic, modest, reliable transportation that he maintained himself with skills learned on the job. More importantly, he'd developed genuine friendships with coworkers based on mutual respect rather than what he could afford to buy. "Check this out," he said, showing me photos on his phone. "I rebuilt the engine on a 1973 Camaro. Mr. Martinez says if I keep improving like this, he'll help me start my own restoration side business in a couple years." But it was Alex who had surprised me most. Despite returning to college after that dramatic winter break, they'd maintained the maturity and insight that had initiated our family's transformation. Alex had changed majors from business to social work, inspired by their own therapy experience and a desire to help other families navigate similar crises. "I've been thinking about my senior thesis," Alex said as we gathered around the dinner table. "I want to research financial enmeshment in families and develop intervention strategies. Dr. Rodriguez said she'd supervise the project, and there might be potential for publication." As we sat down to eat, I looked around the table at these people, who had once been strangers wearing the faces of my family. The past 6 months had been challenging for all of us. There had been difficult conversations, moments of relapse into old patterns, and the hard work of rebuilding trust that had been systematically destroyed. Dad had struggled with accepting his changed role in the family hierarchy, occasionally attempting to reassert traditional authority before catching himself and apologizing. Mom had initially resented having to work outside the home, grieving the loss of her comfortable domestic role before discovering genuine fulfillment in her library job. Emma had gone through a period of resentment about her reduced lifestyle before recognizing how much happier she felt earning her own way. Jake's transformation had included a difficult period of depression as he confronted how his previous identity had been built entirely on consumption and status rather than personal achievement. Family counseling had helped him process these feelings and develop healthier sources of self-worth. But the most challenging aspect had been learning to trust each other again. I'd had to resist the impulse to resume financial caretaking when they struggled, forcing them to develop their own problem-solving skills. They'd had to prove through consistent actions that their changed attitudes were genuine rather than temporary expedients. "Before we eat," Dad said, "I'd like to say something." He stood up, his voice slightly shaky with emotion. 6 months ago, I was a man living in denial about my failures and taking advantage of my son's love to avoid facing reality. I told myself I was protecting my family's stability, but really I was protecting my ego at Hale's expense. He looked directly at me. "Son, you saved this family in ways I'm still discovering. Not just financially, but by refusing to enable our dysfunction when it would have been easier to keep the peace. You forced us to become better people by loving us enough to hold us accountable." Mom reached over and squeezed Dad's hand. "We all learned something important. Real security doesn't come from having someone else pay your bills. It comes from knowing you can handle whatever challenges life brings through honest work and mutual support." Emma raised her water glass. To second chances and the courage to change. Jake nodded. And to brothers who love you enough to save you from yourself even when it's painful. Alex smiled. To families that choose to grow instead of staying broken. Jessica squeezed my hand under the table. And to love that survives manipulation and finds its way back to truth. I raised my own glass, feeling the weight of the past 3 years lifting from my shoulders. To learning that the greatest act of love is sometimes saying no, and the greatest gift we can give each other is the chance to become who we're meant to be. As we began eating, conversation flowed naturally among people who had learned to see each other clearly, rather than through the distortions of financial dependency and emotional manipulation. Dad and Jake discussed restoration techniques for vintage engines. Mom and Emma compared notes about balancing work and education. Alex and Jessica debated theories of family systems therapy. After dinner, as we cleaned dishes together in the easy rhythm of people who'd learned to share responsibilities, Dad pulled me aside. "I have something for you," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check for $12,000. "It's not nearly enough to repay what you sacrificed for us," he said quietly. "But it's the profit from our first major contract since I started being honest about our finances. Your half of the partnership is agreed." I looked at the check, remembering all those months when $12,000 would have felt like a fortune, when I'd struggled to cover everyone's expenses while living on ramen noodles and hope. "Dad, I want you to use this to establish an emergency fund for the family. Real financial security that doesn't depend on anyone else's sacrifice." He shook his head. "Son, you've given enough. This money is yours. No, this represents what our family can accomplish when everyone contributes honestly. That's worth more to me than the money itself." Later that evening, after my family had gone home and Jessica and I were settling into bed, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder how different things might have been if your family had been honest from the beginning about their financial problems?" I considered the question. I think about it sometimes. But I've realized that the crisis forced all of us to confront who we really were and who we wanted to become. Without the breakdown, we might never have had the breakthrough. Even knowing what you know now, would you change anything? I thought about the lonely Christmas dinner in my apartment, the months of sacrifice and resentment, the pain of discovering their manipulation of our relationship. But I also thought about the family gathered around my table today, the genuine love and respect in their eyes, the solid foundation we'd built through honesty and hard work. "I would change how long it took me to set boundaries," I said finally. "But I wouldn't change the outcome. Sometimes the people we love need us to stop enabling them so they can discover their own strength." Jessica curled closer to me. "I'm glad you found the courage to save yourself. It made it possible for us to save each other, too." Outside, Austin's spring air carried the scent of blue bonnets and new growth. Tomorrow I would wake up in a house filled with love rather than resentment, next to a woman who knew my worth, surrounded by family relationships built on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. The greatest lesson I'd learned wasn't about money or boundaries or family dynamics, though all of those had been important. The greatest lesson was that sometimes loving someone means refusing to make their problems easier for them to ignore. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is stop being generous in ways that prevent others from growing. My family had needed to learn they could survive without my financial support before they could appreciate my emotional support. I had needed to learn that my worth wasn't measured by what I could provide for others before I could accept love that wasn't conditional on my usefulness. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt profoundly grateful for that terrible Christmas text message. It had forced me to choose between enabling dysfunction and demanding growth, between being needed and being loved, between the family I'd been protecting and the family we could become. The choice had been difficult, but it had changed everything, and that change had made all the sacrifice worthwhile. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your generosity was being taken for granted, where family or friends expected your help without showing appreciation or working to improve their own situations? How did you handle it, and what did you learn about the difference between helping someone and enabling them? Sometimes the hardest part of loving people is knowing when to step back and let them face the consequences of their choices. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories about setting boundaries with people you care about. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding the courage to make difficult but necessary changes. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stop being the person who fixes everyone else's problems, especially when those same people don't treat you with the respect you deserve. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is refuse to enable the very behaviors that are keeping our loved ones from becoming their best selves. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you find the strength to demand the love and respect you deserve in your own relationships. Remember, you can't save people who don't want to be saved, but you can always choose to save yourself. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.